14. Or Earth Below. Terran sat alone before the small cook fire. What have I done? It had happened so quickly. Emilia's talk of confronting the elders had terrified him. She knew exactly enough to get herself killed, and it was clear that was no longer a deterrent. So you bonded yourself to her as her husband? The thought sickened him. He rubbed at his temple, searching for an alternate course he could have taken. Once set upon a path, Emilia was rarely diverted. In Nox, she'd found her counterbalance. The wild need to challenge every obstacle had found focus and direction. In their love for one another, she and Nox had made each other brighter, truer versions of themselves. Terran had always admired and envied their bond. Now, watching Emilia ripped loose from her mooring like a lost moon robbed of its planet, he wasn't so sure. Oh, leave without her? He snorted into the silence of the empty night. Obstacles as feeble as expansive distances, raging earthbound, and unreachable elders would not stop her. He recognized the desperation ripping through her soul. It was not unlike what tore at him. Skies above, but to exchange bonding oaths with her? The thought struck him afresh. To protect her? What sort of fool was he? Obviously, neither of them was functioning with much logic. Even now, the oath between them burned in his chest. His mind fought against it, but most disturbingly, he found his heart embraced it. Here, in a world tipped fully on its head, was something concrete. Yet Emilia hated the order. Her frustration from the past months had shifted to disdain. And I'm bound to both. Particularly by extending the oath as he had. He groaned and dropped his head into his hands, feeling the tension of the two vows like a knife edge at his throat. I can make this work. Any meeting with the elders would hold risk, but hopefully they would see her as she was, a grieving widow, distraught and seeking comfort. Still, if she crossed that line and made the same accusations she had tonight, the blurred middle would disappear, and even bonded as they were, she'd be in danger. His hands tingled at the thought, spurring him into action. A choking sensation tightened around his throat, and he stretched his neck side to side. Stones. Protecting someone who openly defied the order would pull him apart. Patrum Solus had spoken of the dangers of being bound by conflicting oaths, oath-torn, as it was called. It rarely ended well. Banking the fire, he slowly pushed himself to his feet. He had as long as it took to reach the capital to try to reconcile the two. After making a quick round of the camp, he climbed atop the hovercraft, released his hold on his strength, and let exhaustion take him. Terran awoke to the full light of day and the sounds of someone moving below. He sat bolt upright, his heart pounding. Emilia glanced his way with a smirk. Look who decided to wake up! He blinked the sleep from his eyes and willed his heart to slow. What time is it? Mid-morning? Terran groaned. We should have been gone hours ago. He extricated himself from the blankets and gathered everything in his arms before hopping lightly to the ground. He stashed the gear in one of the compartments and joined her before a small but cheery fire. Emilia handed him a plate of food and picked up her own. I figured since we exchanged oaths, this would be okay. Her voice sounded light, but he could read hesitation in her expression. He gave a too wide smile, trying to recapture some of their previous ease with one another. Of course. Thank you. I could eat an ox. I'm famished. She rolled her eyes. You overseers and your appetites. The plural caught them both, and they ate silently for a moment. Nox would kill me, he said. So much for glazing over things. The truth between them demanded to be verbalized. She looked thoughtful for a moment, pressing her full lips and looking to the horizon. If he were alive, he would. Terran huffed a half-choked laugh. But under the circumstances, I think he'd be grateful, she finally said. He knows why you did it. Her voice dropped. It's me he'd be furious with. Taryn wanted to protest, but every argument sounded hollow. They were both fools. He'd hate that you're putting yourself in danger. He tried to read her, but she kept her head down, curls obscuring her face. Her mouth pursed and jaw set. I have to do this, and in the end hope he forgives me. She stood and shook out her hair, tossing it behind her back as she gathered the plates, the emotion suddenly forgotten. Time to go. The next leg of the trip was uneventful but long. They kept to the main roads, which meant days of nothing but fields and trees broken by the occasional rural cluster. There was no evidence of large Earthbound beyond Eris, but it didn't stop Amelia from watching out the window for any sign whenever they reached open ground. Tension marked their time, a palpable difference. Things between him and Amelia had always been easy, a friendship built with no blurred lines of intention or interest. She and Knox had preoccupied each other's gaze, and he'd never been tempted to vie for her attention. Now his gaze was suddenly drawn to the soft curve of her jaw, the line of her nose, and the way her mouth pursed when she was deep in thought. It disturbed him. This oath between them carried a single purpose, and he didn't appreciate the way it toyed with his emotion. He doubted the vow would act on Amelia in the same way. Her heart still loved and grieved for all she'd lost. For Taryn, who had no one who held his attention or loyalty in such a way, the power of the bond was undeniable. He hesitated to speak or banter too lightly for fear that the oath would claim more of his heart. The thought of betraying Knox by looking at Amelia the wrong way made him ill, as did betraying the trust he and Amelia shared. He could not let a friendship forged over a lifetime be swayed by heady emotions. It was late evening of the second day before the valley bottom gave way to rolling foothills and eventually to the winding switchbacks that climbed into the skybound range. The cluster of Rook marked the boundary into the central Mercurial. Perched in the mountain pass, it straddled the relatively empty lands of the Reaches and the bustling interior of the Mercurial proper. The road twisted through the rocky landscape before opening to a narrow valley where three peaks met and revealed a bustling center. "Will Jai be here?" Amelia asked. The messenger sent from Rickon right after the Earthbound attack had several days' lead on them. Taryn cleared his throat. "I was wondering the same thing. There's a chance he's here if he was able to get a message through to the Order. I'll ask around. With the way you drive, he can't be that far ahead." He glanced sideways and saw a teasing smile accompanying her flat delivery. "Perk of being an overseer, I suppose." She rolled her eyes and smiled. It was good to see something other than numb detachment. In moments like this, he had a glimpse of her as she was before the crushing grief and anger wrapped her in their shroud. For however brief, she was herself, free of its weight. "The buildings here are odd," she said, eyes glued to the approaching city. Earthbound never entered the mountains, negating the need for stilted structures. Taryn always thought the buildings looked like they had been squashed flat by some invisible hand. The first time he had seen a cellar, his stomach had turned. Storing goods inside the earth seemed foolhardy, no matter how far away the Earthbound lived. The low buildings made up for their lack of height with steeply peaked roofs. There were no boardwalks connecting one building to the next, nothing but flat, rocky ground worn smooth over time. Taryn pulled their craft over into a covered garage where a dozen other vehicles sat. "How would you feel about sleeping in a bed tonight?" Amelia's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing." "It's settled then." He tipped his head toward a building across the street. Its multi-level face held evenly spaced windows looking over the road. "Let's grab some rooms and a bite for you to eat." Stepping from the cramped cab of the small vehicle, he stretched. They never left enough legroom in these craft for someone of his size. He gathered some food from their stores into his travel bag before regrouping with Emilia to make their way into the busy building. After a short exchange with the host, Terran handed her a keycard. "Your room is 212. I'm 211. Why don't you go get cleaned up and rest? I'll meet you back here after dinner. I want to ask around for Jai." "I'd argue, but I don't have it in me," she said apologetically. "A hot bath sounds amazing." Once he accompanied her to the room, he retraced his steps back out into the cluster. He had a good idea where to start looking. Taking the transport, he wound his way through the narrow side streets, inwardly marveling at how anyone managed to maintain a sense of direction in the twisting maze. The double rising moons were his only beacon, keeping him on course to the west side of the cluster. A small, modest home sat tucked into the mountainside in a row with a dozen others. The only distinguishing feature was a rich green door, a traditional color in Rickon. He knocked. A squat man answered, the bushy eyebrows that dominated his round face lifting in surprise. "Terran!" He poked his head to the side to see around him. "Where's Nox? Didn't come with you this time?" "Dedan." Terran gave him a tight smile. "No, he didn't come." "Ah, well, come in. Glad to see you all the same," the man rambled as he led the way down a narrow hallway. "It's been an age since I've seen someone from the old cluster." Terran frowned. That wasn't what he was hoping to hear. "You haven't seen Jai in the past week?" "Oh, Jai? Is that Markin's boy?" Terran nodded. "No, I haven't had anyone through this way in months. I think you and Nox heading to the capital in the spring was my last visit." A snake of dread slid down Terran's back. There was no way Jai would fail to check in with Dedan. The Rickon-born man always had a welcome and information for anyone coming to or from the cluster. "Can I offer you anything?" Dedan gestured to the kitchen ahead of him. "You're welcome to help yourself to our supplies." "No, thank you," Terran declined. "I'm afraid I have some pressing business I'm hoping you can help with." "Ah!" Dedan arched a thick eyebrow. The action made it look like a large caterpillar had come to life on his forehead. "In that case," he steered them down another hallway, "better come into my office." The office looked more like a chaotic version of the communication relay building he and Nox had visited in Rickon. Equipment and wires filled every last inch of wall space, with little room for much else. A cluttered desk sat wedged against one wall. Dedan picked his way through the crowded room with surprising ease for a man of his girth. Terran waited in the doorway until he spotted a clear chair tucked between a couple of crates. "Rickon is in trouble," he said as he lowered himself into the chair. Again, he was struck with the sense he was missing some large piece of the picture, and the gnawing gap irked him. He related the past weeks to the man. Dedan sat slack-jawed at the news. "Nox is dead?" The blunt words ripped into his gut. "He is. Jai was to come see you and have a relay sent to the Order." The older man frowned. "Why not send a message to me? I would have forwarded anything you needed." Before Terran could give an answer, the man tossed his hands in the air. "Of course, the communication grid is down out there, isn't it? No one's been getting messages in or out of the reaches for weeks in some areas. Old equipment failing is the word on the street." "The Order knows communications have been out?" "I'd assume so. All the chatter on the subject has come through official lines." Terran's brow creased in thought. "Emilia went through our system with a fine-toothed comb and couldn't find anything wrong with the equipment. She thought something was amiss on the receiving end." Dedan puffed out his cheeks. "Oh, that is odd. Emilia is competent. I trust her judgment on the matter." He grew sober. "How's she holding up?" Terran rubbed the back of his neck and took a long breath. "Not well. She lost the baby after Nox passed." Dedan clucked his tongue and laced his fingers together on the desk in front of him. "Terrible. I'm sorry to hear that." "She's here with me." The words fell from his mouth almost as a confession. Dedan raised a beefy eyebrow at him. She's here to petition Nox to be added to the Hall of the Fallen. I couldn't convince her otherwise.
Nor should you. She'll walk through this how she must. As will we all.
Terran let out a breath, feeling some of the tension melt from his body. He leaned back in the chair. Do you have access to Rook's communication records? Jai was to send a message once he arrived here. Maybe he went to someone else?
Not likely, Dedan said slowly. They've been cracking down on freelance relay communication. Anyone like me has been down at the council hall jumping through hoops trying to get the appropriate permits.
A flicker of annoyance crossed his usually jovial features.
Trouble?
Terran asked. Dedan took an exaggerated breath.
It's all a bunch of bureaucratic nonsense. No doubt to grab the extra fees they want to levy.
What spurred the change?
It's the newly elected council. He's making sweeping changes, trying to make this a mini-capital by the looks of things.
In his agitation, he picked up a small circuit board and began working on it.
They threatened to confiscate all of my equipment if I didn't go through the proper channels, and they're monitoring for rogue communications. I doubt I'll have an operating permit anytime soon. I think they mean to push everything into the official channels.
He looked around at his equipment as if they were as dejected as he was at the delay. Would Jai be able to send a message to the Order through these other channels?
Dedan pursed his lips in thought. I suppose he could. It would have cost him a hefty sum, though.
He rubbed his chin absently.
I could probably creep through the outgoing comms and see what I can find.
Terran's gut churned. It marked another innocuous-looking detail that felt dangerously coincidental. The dismantling of basic infrastructure within the Reaches could be natural byproducts of circumstance, but for it to happen all at once set him on edge. And if you're caught?
Dedan's brown eyes twinkled. Well, worst comes to worst, I am working at the request of an overseer.
He pulled a keyboard forward and tapped into it. A screen balanced precariously on top of several large boxes flickered to life.
Looks like the usual chatter on the primary channels, nothing urgent. Let's see if there's anything encrypted.
He mumbled to himself as his hands moved over the keyboard.
His name is not popping up.
He scanned for a moment more.
Well, here's an odd little thing, a stalled message.
Stalled?
Usually flagged by officials as suspicious for one reason or another.
Terran frowned. Any way to see what it is?
Dedan hummed. Should be. It's under a few encrypts. If I start poking around and opening files haphazardly, they'll know.
Is there a way to keep your movements between us?
Well, of course, Overseer.
Dedan smiled, scratching at his cheek.
It will take a bit of time, but shouldn't be beyond my capabilities.
Good. Anything in the past couple of days heading to the Order I want to hear about.
Will do. More than likely, Jai carried on to the capital himself after running into complications with the communications office.
I'm sure you're right, Terran said, standing. I merely want to be thorough.
Of course, of course. Where are you staying?
Shale House.
Oh, enjoying the finer things, are we?
Terran gave an embarrassed shrug. After days on the road, it looked as if Amelia could use a little comfort. The teasing left Dedan's voice and turned contrite.
Good choice. If I find anything, I'll send a message your way.
Come in person. I'd like to keep my presence here quiet until we know what's happening with our communications. Dedan tapped his nose, caterpillar brows flexing.
Good idea.